So we will continue our study of the heart with this outlay here. We've got lots of pictures, even one of the Pope, which really does have a place here, and I'll explain that in a minute. Let's start with a picture that we should be familiar with, which is the one at the bottom center. We will begin our study of the valves with this picture, and we see that we have four valves. They are called the tricuspid, the bicuspid, pulmonary semilunar, which is also called the plain old pulmonary valve, and the aortic semilunar, which is also shortened quite often to the aortic valve. So there we have our four: tricuspid, bicuspid, pulmonary, and aortic valves. Now the bicuspid has to do with that Pope's hat. The hat that the Pope is wearing, this is actually called a mitre hat. And so someone looking at the bicuspid valve for the first time, one of the early discoverers, thought it looked like the Pope's hat. And so he nicknamed it or named it the mitral valve. Sometimes you'll hear it called the mitral valve. It doesn't look much like that hat to me, but nonetheless, bicuspid and mitral valves are the same thing. So let's take a look at our familiar picture, the red, white, and blue one down here at the bottom. Let's name the things that we know. We know that this is the right atrium, and this is the right ventricle. Make that the left ventricle and the left atrium, and now I'm going to change back to right. So we can see that the tricuspid sits in between the right atrium and the right ventricle, and that our bicuspid or mitral sits in between the left atrium or left ventricle, and the right ventricle connects with this blood tube right here, and here we have a valve called the pulmonary valve. And the left ventricle connects underneath here to this big tube. And there's this valve sitting in the way here called the aortic valve. Okay, so now we've got their four positions. Let's see if we can get a better look at them. Let's pretend that we cut the heart off. We lop off this part right here and up here, here. Cut that valve off too. All right, there. So everything above this line we cut off. And now we're going to stand on top of the heart, and that's what we have here. So if we were standing on top here, we've now removed the atria and the tops of those blood vessels, and we can see four valves. You can see 1, 2, 3, 4 valves, and this is what they look like on top. So this one would be the tricuspid, and you can see that it has 3 cusps. 1, 2, 3. The bicuspid over here has 2 cusps, and then the aortic valve and the pulmonary valve, you don't talk about their cusps, but you can see they have 3 each. The way these are shaped, if you look at them like at this one right here, this is a valve that is closed, and it is closed on the inside of the structure, whatever the structure is. We're inside the right atrium here, and you can see if you push right there, you can just imagine it would be fairly easy to push through here, and if we push through the right atrium, we would fall down into the right ventricle. Same thing over here. If we were in this, which would be the left atrium, and we pushed on these flaps, they would open up. We would be here and push, and we would be down in the left ventricle. However, look at 3 and 4 here. If we were up here, which would be outside the left ventricle, what's underneath here, and we're right here, we are right here. And if we push here, we can't get back into the left ventricle. Same thing with number 4, only this time we are looking right here. And we're standing right on top of that. We're just outside the right ventricle, and if we push, we can't get in. However, if we were inside either ventricle and we push, it would blow open like this. All of which means that blood will move from the right atrium to the right ventricle, or from the left atrium to the left ventricle, or from the right ventricle into this tube, which we'll give a name to later, or from the left ventricle into this tube, but it won't move backwards. Again, the 4 valves, they're all one-way valves, which means they're kind of like a one-way door. They only open one direction, and they only open if they're being pushed. The 4 valves are the aortic valve, the pulmonary valve, the mitral, also called the bicuspid, and the tricuspid valve.